Mr. President of the OR, Simion, and Mr. Vice Chair Pipera, esteemed colleagues, I'm honored by your invitation to this conference and extend my greetings on behalf of the AfD group in the German Bundestag. I would also like to thank my colleague in Council of Europe, Dr. Mukachu, which I met yesterday before coming here, for his work towards bringing together like-minded patriots. Your invitation demonstrates that you are not concerned with trivial distinctions, but with the future of Europe. Let me make some preliminary notes. It's multi-speed and balance, etc. It refers to an old saying, the two-speed Europe or the two-gear Europe, one's moving fast, very fast, and the others lagging behind, but moving. The problem is they all move in the same direction, and it's the wrong direction. And that cannot be the case, that we promote moving fast in the wrong direction. Everything we do has more to do with the U-turn, as I will explain later. So for decades, the European Union and much of the Western world have been on a misguided trajectory. Since the 1970s, our societies have become increasingly entangled in politics that do not serve the people, but instead entrench the power of bureaucrats, large corporations, and an unaccountable deep state, getting deeper by the day, deeper by the hour, perhaps. This December, the deep state in Romania and the EU revealed its true face. The voters chose Călin Georgescu. The deep state was unwilling to accept defeat. It performed a coup against the elected leader, or almost on the way to be elected leader. It revealed that all the self-righteous rhetoric about our democracy is a smokescreen for an utter disregard of the will of the people. The same EU officials who lecture the world about democracy actively support its abolition in Romania, and not only in Romania alone. The same picture we see in Georgia and also in Moldova. Across the Atlantic, well, this must end. What we need now is nothing less than a 180-degree U-turn, a comprehensive and bold transformation to restore freedom, prosperity, and accountability. Across the Atlantic, we've seen the beginnings of change. In the Americas, voices of reason are rising against the tide of corruption and overreach. But here in Europe and across Eurasia, the challenge remains even greater. The further west we go, or we come, from the Atlantic to the Northern Sea, from the Adriatic to the Black Sea, the worse the grip of big government, crony capitalism, and the deep state becomes. Let me be clear, this is not about opposing legitimate business or responsible governance. No, the problem lies in what we've allowed to replace genuine enterprise and fair administration. What we call big business today is often not business at all, it's crony capitalism. Corporations protected by connections and to governments and international institutions fed off taxpayer euros and dollars instead of competing in a free market. These corporations are sustained by policies crafted in Brussels, Davos, New York, and Washington, not to meet the needs of ordinary citizens or consumers, but to protect an elite few. This time has become, high time has come, to downsize government. Perhaps some of you know that the great journalist, American journalist John Stossel launched a series of TV productions which was in the 1990s, and it was all about reducing the size of the state, and the buzzword was bring government down, downsize government. That was the exact words, downsize government, for God's sake. Not just for the sake of efficiency, but because oversized governments inevitably serve themselves rather than the people. This means downsizing the bloated bureaucracy that consumes our resources, downsizing militaries that are often used to serve political agendas instead of protecting citizens, downsizing the apparatus of politicians and civil servants who have become consumed by their own interests or those of their parties rather than the interests of their constituencies. Let's not forget the root cause, crony capitalism. This system thrives on taxpayer money, funding products and services that ordinary consumers neither need nor want. It is the antithesis of a free market. For example, Javier Milei, in his courageous speech at the Davos meeting a few days ago, eloquently exposed decades of failures. He highlighted how policies stretching from Europe to the Americas have betrayed the needs of the people. He spoke not only as a statesman, but as a voice of reason and truth in an age of widespread misinformation and corruption. We must demand a complete U-turn, a 180-degree turn in our direction. This isn't about tinkering around the edges of minor reforms. It is about tearing down the policies that have kept us trapped in cycles of dysfunction, waste, and elitism. The current approach, whether administered from Brussels, New York, or the old mainstream establishment in Washington, has failed. It seeks to impose a vision of governance that is out of touch with reality and destructive to our shared future. Let me borrow a phrase from history. Tear down that wall. Tear down the wall that separates the people from enlightened, responsible, and clever politics. Tear down the wall that divides us from economic policies that actually create wealth and opportunity for all, not just the privileged few. Tear down the wall of overreach that has stifled our freedoms and creativity. We are standing against what I can only describe as a mainstream madness. This madness began decades ago with events like the rise of the so-called climate emergency, which was promoted as a substitute for the Cold War, an emergency that has been manipulated ever since to justify control and suppression. This is not to say that environmental stewardship isn't important. It is, but we must separate real science from political agendas. For too long, working people and the creative minds of our society have been betrayed. Taxpayer money has been stolen to feed a system that enriches a selected few. This push for global governance, starting dysfunctional and destined to remain so, must be stopped. It is time to bring the state back to its proper role as a servant of the people. Politicians, administrators, and even NGOs must be held accountable. The state should no longer be a feeding ground for parties and fraudulent organizations, but a tool to empower the majority. Let us act decisively and fearlessly to restore the values that have built our societies: freedom, accountability, and true democracy. We owe it to ourselves and we owe it to future generations. Thank you very much.